All right. What should we start with? Libya? Yeah, let's start with Libya. Okay, good afternoon. As you will have seen, the Secretary General has strongly condemned the military escalation and fighting in and around Tripoli, including yesterday's aerial attack by Libyan National Army aircraft against the airport in Tripoli. The Secretary General continues to urge the immediate halt of all military operations in order to de-escalate the situation and prevent an all-out conflict, while emphasizing that there is no military solution to the conflict in Libya. The Secretary General said his special representative in Libya, Ghassan Salamé, stands ready to facilitate dialogue. And a short while ago, in a statement issued from Tripoli, Mr. Salamé reiterated that he is determined to hold the national conference at the earliest possible date, as it remains a historic opportunity. At the same time, he said, we cannot request a conference against the backdrop of artillery bombardment and air raids, which could compromise the ability of all those who express willingness from all over the country to attend safe and free to voice their opinions. Mr. Salamé said he would work to the fullest extent of his ability for the Libyan National Conference to take place as soon as possible once the success requirements are re-established. And the High Commissioner for Human Rights, Michelle Bachelet, joined the Secretary General in reminding all parties to the conflict in Libya of their obligations under international law to ensure the protection of civilians and civilian infrastructure. She urged all parties to take measures to ensure civilians do not once again bear the brunt of the fighting, highlighting in particular the need to ensure protection of extremely vulnerable people, including refugees and migrants. According to the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, some 4,500 individuals have been displaced from the affected neighborhoods to the comparatively safe areas in Tripoli, Bani Walid, and Tarhuna. Concerns remain for civilians caught in conflict-affected areas who are unable to leave their homes during the ongoing fighting. Humanitarians are working to ensure the preparedness for potential additional needs. This includes ongoing relocation of vulnerable refugees and migrants from detention facilities in conflict-affected areas. Advocacy continues for the relocation of all refugees and migrants currently in detention facilities in conflict-affected areas. The World Health Organization, for its part, reports that among the dead are 2 doctors who have been providing critically needed services to civilians in Tripoli. The agency reiterates that targeting healthcare workers and health facilities is against international humanitarian law. A $202 million appeal for the humanitarian response for Libya this year is just 6% funded. Turning to Yemen, Martin Griffiths, the special envoy for Yemen for the Secretary General, said today he was deeply saddened to hear of the tragic deaths of civilians, the majority of whom were young female students attending school in an area of Sana'a on April 7th. He said this loss of life shows the terrible impact that the conflict continues to have on society's most vulnerable and the country's infrastructure as well as essential services. Mr. Griffith strongly urged all parties to make every possible effort to put an end to civilian suffering and allow young Yemenis to grow up in peace and safety. He said only an inclusive political solution will end this cycle of violence and destruction. And yesterday, as you will have seen, we issued a statement on the recent developments in Sudan, in which the Secretary General said he's following closely the demonstrations in the country and appealed to all actors to exercise utmost restraint and avoid violence. He called for full respect for human rights, including the freedom of assembly, the freedom of expression, as well as the release of detained protesters. The Secretary General called on the government of Sudan to create a conducive environment for a solution to the current situation and to promote inclusive dialogue. He also affirmed that the UN stands ready to support any effort agreed by the Sudanese to peacefully resolve the crisis. We also have an update from our humanitarian colleagues on the response to Cyclone Idai. In Malawi, UN agencies and its partners have reached approximately 90,000 households with relief assistance, including food, water, sanitation, health, nutrition, shelter, and protection. Assistance has also arrived in the country to support shelter and displacement tracking, coordination, early recovery, and logistics. Approximately $19.3 million of the $45.2 million required for immediate assistance in Malawi has been mobilized so far. In Mozambique, more than 756,000 people have received food assistance since Cyclone Idai made landfall last month. According to the government, almost 161,000 people are sheltering in 164 sites. The World Food Programme has deployed nutritionists in the 4 priority provinces and devised a 6-month plan to treat at least 100,000 children and women for moderate to acute malnutrition. And at least 593 people have received oral cholera vaccine, representing 73% of the total target. According to OCHA, the Mozambique Humanitarian Response Plan for the cyclone, which is seeking $282 million, is currently just 21% funded. And I want to flag that the Secretary General will speak at the closing session of the ECOSOC Youth Forum at 5:45 p.m. this evening. The Secretary General will reiterate that young people have a partner in the UN, one that shares their concerns about unemployment, climate change, and access to the basic needs of such a quality education and health care. He will also highlight the UN Youth Strategy, which launched last September to ensure that the organization responds better to the needs of young people and includes their contributions to making the Sustainable Development Goals available for all. In particular, he will highlight the UN's commitment to improve the conditions of young women who are too often discriminated against in every sector, from health and education to access to the labor force and financing. And he will also appeal to youth to keep contributing to their ideas, energy, and creativity and continue engaging with the United Nations. Meanwhile, the Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed, between yesterday and today, is in Lebanon, where she met the President and the Prime Minister of the country, and also addressed the Regional Forum on Sustainable Development and met with resident coordinators from the region. And back here, the High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Grandi, briefed the Security Council this morning. He stressed that today there is an unprecedented stigmatization of refugees and migrants in the media and in politics, and this should concern us all, and it is creating a toxic environment that makes it increasingly difficult to tackle this issue. Mr. Grandi told members of the Council that they have a critical role in addressing the refugee crisis and urged them to focus on 3 areas: solving security crises, providing support to countries hosting refugees, and removing obstacles and providing solutions for refugees who wish to return to their home countries or start a dignified life elsewhere. He also emphasized that the countries should not take for granted the generosity of host countries and called for more support for countries like Bangladesh, Lebanon, Peru, and Colombia, who have received millions of refugees in the past months. He added that this support is key to preserving stability in the regions. Mr. Grandi is expected to be at the stakeout around 1 p.m. A couple of notes more. More than 175 million children, around half of the pre-primary age children globally, are not enrolled in pre-primary education, missing a critical investment opportunity and suffering deep inequalities from the start. That's according to a new UNICEF report released today. The report reveals that children enrolled in at least 1 year of pre-primary education are more likely to develop the critical skills they need to succeed in schools, less likely to repeat grades or drop out of school, and therefore better able to contribute to peaceful and prosperous societies. Also on education, the World Bank and UNICEF yesterday announced a new commitment to promote education, skills training for young people and in developing countries with the global goal of boosting their employment prospects. The partnership will align $1 billion in World Bank investments with Generation Unlimited, a new global initiative currently hosted by UNICEF, which aims to prepare the world's 1.8 billion young people for the transition to work by connecting secondary age education to employment and entrepreneurship. Tomorrow, scheduled as of now in terms of press briefings, but things may change. 11 o'clock, there'll be a briefing sponsored by the Permanent Mission of Mexico to the UN on Amnesty International's 2018 annual global report on the death penalty, development statistics from across the world. At noon, I should be joined by Ramiz Alakbarov, the director of UNFPA Strategy and Policy Division, brief you on UNFPA's State of the World Population Report. Immediately after that, at 12:30, there'll be a press conference by the PGA and the director of the ILO. And Monica will tell you more about that. And a farewell to print. Starting today, the News and Media Division of the Department of Global Communications will no longer print hard copies of press releases. This is part of our ongoing effort to save paper, to go paperless, and to save money. But rest assured that Ray, Eleni, and Mendaka, our friendly crew at the documents counter, will continue to provide you with whatever assistance you may require. Arthur.
Yes, sorry, Stéphane, just to clarify, as things stand today, are the April 14 to 16 dates for the Libya conference still firm, or given that the language seems to be shifting to appropriate date as soon as possible?
I would interpret Mr. Salamé's statement, which we just got a few minutes ago in Arabic, which we did a rough translation of, as shifting dates, and I think is reaffirming his commitment to hold the conference. But I think, as most people would understand, it's hard to hold a conference while the bullets are whizzing. So
we could probably expect a formal change being notified at some point soon.
Indeed. Evelyn and then Masoud.
Thank you. On Yemen, has anyone spoken to Saudi Arabia for resuming bombing everything that moves that I thought it stopped?
Discussions with all sides involved in the conflict are continuous.
The SG spoke to anybody here?
I have nothing to report on the SG's personal contacts, but Mr. Griffiths remains in the region. Masoud G.
Thank you, Stéphane. Stéphane, on this situation in West Bank, where during the ensuing election, it has been threatened that Mr. Netanyahu will annex the West Bank also, and that in the past we have seen, despite all the caveats on this occupation, building on the occupied territories, it has happened, and it continues to happen.
What is the question, Masoud?
What do you think can the Secretary General do to prevail upon Israel to what you call at least, to vacate?
Well, I think I commented on that yesterday, so I would refer you to my answers yesterday. I think the Secretary General's position on the need for the parties to negotiate directly to find a just and durable solution to the conflict has been stated over and over again, and that continues to be the underlying message of all the contacts we have with all the parties involved.
Does the Secretary General believe that two-state solution is still viable?
Indeed.
And
yes.
I also wanted to find out, because this has been asked. This question has been asked of Pakistani.
Yeah, please put your microphone closer so I can hear you.
Sir?
Your microphone closer to your mouth so I can hear you.
Sorry, sir. Pakistani Prime Minister also said that India is going to annex Kashmir like Israel is doing in case of West Bank. Do you have any comments?
I haven't seen those comments, and we tend not to comment on things that have not yet happened. Yes, sir.
Can you give us a sense of whether there's a defined threshold that needs to be reached in cases of massive detentions based on religion and ethnicity before they become part of the Secretary General's mandate to actively address? Is this a purely discretional?
What is the
it's
context
regarding
of your question?
the Xinjiang region of China.
I think first of all, our human rights colleagues are engaged in this, and I wowould refer you to the readouts of the Secretary General's meetings on China.
I understand that his envoys have spoken about it, but is there a part of his mandate, a threshold that needs to be reached before he speaks about it?
I think the Secretary General has spoken out about human rights in China, as he has all over the world.
About this specific issue, though?
I think he has. Yes.
Do you have any reaction from Secretary General about the increasing level of Venezuelans leaving the country, and now they are under resort of the criminals and smugglers to be able to move to another countries around the continent? And besides that, of course, the human trafficking is increasing in a really huge number on regards.
The exploitation of migrants by criminal groups is something that has been a concern of the Secretary General for quite some time, which he has spoken about. As to the situation in Venezuela, there will be, as far as I understand, a humanitarian briefing tomorrow in the Security Council. The Secretary General will be present. Mr. Lowcock, the emergency relief coordinator, will provide the briefing on behalf of the UN, and we'll have that will give you a good update on the humanitarian situation in Venezuela. Masoud.
Yes, just a follow-up. Does the Secretary General plan to have any conversation with the Saudis about the situation in Yemen, which is going back to worse?
The Secretary General has had numerous conversations.
But they're not listening.
Let me find a full stop in my sentence before you ask a follow-up. The Secretary General has had a number of conversations with the leadership in Saudi Arabia and other interested parties. Mr. Griffiths is continuing to shuttle around the region in order to get the parties to focus on a political solution, including on the implementation of what was agreed upon in Sweden around Hodeidah. Yeah,
I just wanted to get a sense. Is it a discretionary threshold?
I'm not aware of a hard number. In the short answer to your question. Monica, après vous. Après moi, plutôt.